Today I'm going to be talking to Dee Dee Wilde. Hello.
Hello, Vic. Happy New Year to you.
Yes. I forgot with all this.
2021.
Yeah, I know. Well, with this sort of thing, I lose track of the days, and
Yes.
I'm sort of beginning to lose track of the year. So
Well, I always remember Saturday and Sunday because that's when I have my peach on the beach cocktail.
Oh, all right. That's really good.
Yes.
So anyway, my traditional first question is, what do you do?
Well, I have been a dancer all my life. I started when I was 3 years old and I'm now 74. So I've been dancing for 71 years.
Wow.
Basically. Yes. And of course, I don't know people out there know, but I used to be in a dance group called Pan's People, who were the regular dancers on BBC One TV, Top of the Pops, from basically, I would say, well, during the 70s. It's best to leave it at that, the 70s.
Yeah.
And I'm still dancing, even at my ripe old age, I'm still dancing, and I teach loads of ladies around the West Country who have got sort of like minds to me, who want to keep fit and also communicate, and I teach them how to boogie on down.
Yes, fantastic. That's what I must say. That's one of the best answers I've had to that question, actually.
Really?
So far. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So tell me, you say you started dancing at the age of 3.
Yeah, I have always wanted to be a dancer all my life. I don't actually. Oh, there was a point where I decided I wanted to be a wren, and then I was told that wrens don't go to sea with the sailors. So I thought, bugger that, I'm not going to be a wren. I'm going to carry on and be a dancer.
Yeah.
And I always wanted to be a dancer. It was the only ambition I ever had. I went to ballet school, and the only downside of ballet school is that dancing came first, education came second. So all my life, I've had a slight inferiority complex about the fact that I have no education. But of course, as you get older and older, you learn along the way. So I read a lot. But I left school at about 16, 17. There's not very much more they could do for me. And anyway, my headmistress called me a scatterbrained grasshopper.
Oh, okay.
And, so I don't think she thought I was heading for any heights at all. And then when I left school, I was living in London with my mother in Chelsea. So I was a Chelsea girl. Right. Because my father was working for Papa Doc in Haiti. And Mum, I know, yes. And he came back because he got threats on his life. But Mummy and I lived in Chelsea on the King's Road. And if I put my head out of the windows and I craned my neck, I could see the Apple headquarters. And I could see Beatles coming and going. Wow. Anyway, to cut a long story short, I used to go to loads of auditions and get nowhere. And then one day I was sitting on the bus and I saw an audition in the paper. It said, the Beat Girls want one dancer. And they said the audition, which was at the Dance Centre. And I don't know if you know, but the Dance Centre in Floral Street, London, is the first of all dance centres around England. It was the one that became famous after, and then, of course, after that was Pineapple. And I thought, well, I'm going to go to that and see how I go. So off I trolleyed to this audition. I was working in Beavers at the time. And I said to the owner of Beavers, I'm really sorry, but I got terrible toothache and I won't be coming in the morning because I'm going to the dentist. Well, I wasn't going to the dentist. I was going to the audition. So I went off to the audition. Tell me when I'm being boring.
No, you're brilliant.
I went off to the audition and arrived at the Floral Street to the dance centre, bright-eyed and bushy-tailed. And I went up to the reception. And I saw a lot of girls sort of streaming outside. And I said, here I am for the audition. She said, oh, join the queue. So there was about 200 of us. Eventually we came in, we traipsed up to the top room, this big room, and we all trooped in there. I mean, there might have been more than 200, I can't remember. And then the audition started and I was stuffed at the back. I couldn't move. So I elbowed my way to the front of the queue and we started the audition. I didn't do very well, I can tell you. I think the only reason they actually noticed me is because I was going wrong and everybody else was doing it right. Because I remember the teacher saying, "You in the orange shirt, you're going the wrong way." But anyway, having said that, about 2 hours later, it was 199 nil points and Dee Dee Wilde, the winner, and they chose me. I mean, they did actually admit that they chose me really more because of my personality than the way I could dance. And I joined the Beat Girls, which is basically a TV group who used to dance on BBC Two called Beat Room. Do you remember Beat Room? And Yadzu. Sorry, I've got something in my eye, so I'm fiddling with my eye all the time. Okay. Yes, so, oh God, so I'm having problems here. So I joined the Beat Girls and we did loads of different things over the next 6 months. We had a manager called Gary, and he literally managed us. And then we decided after about 7 to 8 months that he was making a lot of money and we weren't. So it was Christmas 1966. So Flick Colby, our choreographer, Babs Lord, who's now married to, do you know Robert Powell, the actor?
Yes.
Yes, married to actor, and myself. We sat up in a little flat in Earlham Street in Covent Garden and got quite sozzled and thought we're going to form a new group. So we were there drinking bottles of wine because one did in those days, I don't now. And at about 3 a.m, we were thinking the name for this new group, and Dionysus Darlings went out of the window. We thought that was just too much. Though I quite liked it because it meant DD.
Yes.
Anyway, they decided Dionysus Darlings. So we actually landed on Pan's people because Pan was the god of dance and fertility and music, and he had 6 handmaidens. So we became Pan's handmaidens, and once we went to bed blurry-eyed about 4 o'clock, it was Pan's people, and that's how Pan's people started.
That's brilliant. Yeah, and it's obviously helped by wine as well.
Yeah, well, the reason why we were a success, Vic, is a couple of things. Is up till then, there was most of the groups around where the sort of Paddy Stone dancers, the Irving Davis dancers, the Tiller girls, and the girls had no identity.
No.
So we felt that what we wanted to do is be a group, like a pop group, and each girl have her own identity. We would never change the group unless somebody left to get married or something, so that people would get to know who we were. And then we thought, how can we then identify ourselves if they don't know our names? So we decided to do it by color. So people always knew I was red. It's not because I'm wearing it today. So, but to begin with, we stuck together, and what we did, any job we did, it didn't matter. I think our first job was £7, 10 shillings. And we split that between the 6 of us. One of the two, actually no, 2 of the girls got £7, 10 shillings, and we split it between the 2 of us. And we decided that's how we were going to start off. And then luckily we got a manager called James Ramble, and he did an incredible send out to people, which is a booklet. And we landed a TV series in Belgium called Vibrato. And that was our stepping stone. And we used to go to Belgium every month. And we'd earn enough money. They would pay us a fee, which was a lot in those days, because the BBC, lousy payers, they never pay you anything. And the companies over here don't pay you very much. No. But the Belgians paid you very generously, and they gave you a whole lot of money per diem. So every day you had food money. Right. So we used to eat chips and mayonnaise every day. And then when we left Belgium, we'd go back home, we'd live on our per diems that we had for that week, for the next month, until the next gig came up. Wow. And that's how we survived for quite a long time. We also got another series in Holland called Moefgaga. You must have heard of that, Moefgaga. Or, I mean, it was very, very avant-garde pop show. Oh, right. And they had all the English artists, all of them. who
Oh,
came
okay.
over. I remember once there was three of us, because although there were six of us, we didn't necessarily always go out as six dancers. If a company said, I only want three, we'd still do it. And I remember we were rehearsing in this dingy hall in the middle of some dreadful town in the snow. And we were in the middle of rehearsals and the door flew open and in came Roger Daltrey and the Who. Hello, girls, who sidled up to us, and our eyes popped out on stalks. So we started chatting and everything. So that was really amazing. That happened to us quite a lot. We worked with a lot of people, Status Quo and the Kinks and people like that over there in Belgium and in Holland.
So that's interesting. So you really made a name already, but not here.
Not here.
But
No.
English artists would have known.
Yeah, it was really funny because we became quite famous in Belgium. Yeah. And then as we became well known, we'd then do gigs, outside gigs and appearances and all that sort of thing. So that was great. And then, of course, with Move Gaga, both Move Gaga and Vibrato were exactly like Top of the Pops. Yeah. But very much, especially Move Gaga, it was so artistic. He'd have us sort of sitting in somebody's eye and then sliding down in a teardrop, or he'd have us tied to the wheel and we'd be wheeling around, or he'd have us in baths looking down on each other. He was really, his name was Bob Ruins. He was years in front of his time. So we loved doing that. We loved it. That kept us going for 18 months. And we managed to survive on that, and also doing small gigs. And then we used to rehearse at the White House Hotel in Earl's Court. And this hotel was run by a commander. We called him Commander or David. And it was full of wonderful old dears, older than me, by the way, who used to sit in the sitting room rattling their teacups. And he gave us the annex. Across the road, there's an annex. And he said, you can use that because they're all so deaf, they'll never hear your music. So we used to rehearse there for Belgium and for Holland. One day, the door goes, hello, Commander. He said, I just thought I'd let you know, but tomorrow at 2:00 or whatever time it was, I can't remember, there's an audition for Top of the Pops in the main hotel.
Oh, wow.
So, like girls we are, we all squealed with excitement. And we decided that we'd all go to the audition, not as a group, but individual. Anyway, we went to the audition, we auditioned, and at the end of it, the lady called Virginia Mason, I think her name was Virginia Mason. Not exactly sure, actually. I think it was. She chose two of us. And in actual fact, it was me and Ruth Pearson, one of the girls from Pans, who is now sadly not with us anymore. And so the very first Top of the Pops Ruth and I ever did was with the Gojos, because that's who we were joining, the group called the Gojos. And we danced to the 1415 Fruit Gun Company? What's that awful song called? I can't remember. Oh, gosh, now my brain is gone. 1415 Fruit Gum Company. But anyway, the song, I can't remember now, so maybe you could look it up for me. Yeah. And that's the first time we ever danced on Top of the Pops, but not as ourselves. While we were there, this small gentleman walked into the room, whose name was Colin Charman. And we were just rehearsing, and Ruthie said, Dee Dee, there's Colin. And I said, who's he? She said, he's a director. Not only was he involved in Top of the Pops, he was either directing or producing, but he'd been the director on Gadzooks and the Beat Girls that Ruthie had originally been in. So when we finished rehearsing, he was quite small. We took him by each arm and we propelled him to the BBC bar. And we said, dear Colin, we pumped him full of drinks. And we said, please, Colin, please, next time you want dancers, we've got this incredible group called Pans People. It's choreographed by Philip Colby, who used to be with an American company, which again escapes me, in America. She's got all the latest moves. She's terribly sassy. She's terribly together. We're very modern. We're absolutely the best modern thing you can think of in this day and age. Please, will you give us a chance? And he said, I'll see about it. And then we didn't hear anything. And then one day, 3 weeks later, the telephone went and it was him.
Wow.
And Flick picked it up and she said, hello. And he said, this is Colin Charman here. I desperately need 3 girls tomorrow. Tomorrow. Do you think you can manage that? And Flick put the phone down, said, of course, she said yes. And we just screamed. Wow. So it was decided that Ruth and I, because we'd done Top of the Pops before, we knew the layout, and Flick, the choreographer, would do Top of the Pops. We didn't have a number ready, but we'd been doing something with Aretha Franklin for Belgium. So we decided to mishmash that to the record that they asked us to do. So by the time the next day came, we had our number ready. And amazing. That's how we started on Top of the Pops.
Amazing.
And
what was the number?
Well, this is the problem. Everybody says it's something different.
Yeah.
I thought it was, I think it was, oh yes, young girls get out of my mind.
Oh, yeah.
Union Gap. A lot of the other girls think it was the box tops, but right. I think box tops were later. You know, you got me you wrote me a letter, is it? You wrote me a letter or something like that anyway.
Yeah.
So unfortunately, nobody seems to really remember.
Right.
And I thought it was Union Gap. And that was our first Top of the Pops. And then 3 weeks later, he rang up and he said, could you all do it? And I want you to dance to You Better Not Mess with the US Mail, by Elvis.
Right.
That's how Pan's people started their career.
Amazing. Again, that's really a case of being in the right place.
Yeah, right place. But also it was a lot of tenacity too, because, you know, we were determined to get through. Yeah. We weren't, because, you know, there was a couple of things, you know, Babs was offered a couple of really great dancing gigs, and there was a bit of temptation, but we were so loyal to each other. We knew that we were on to a winning ticket, because nobody had ever done what we did.
No.
We were all very individual girls, but we were part of a unit. We all looked incredibly different. We looked a bit like the girl next door who made good.
Yes.
And we had, I think people will say, I don't know, people always say to us, we had a very sort of rather like the full-on sexuality, which like Hot Gossip had, who were amazing, but they were very different to us. In that time, because Hot Gossip came much later, it was very much a tongue-in-cheek sexuality. Yeah. And so, of course, we had loads and loads of followers. Our costumes were phenomenal, because Flick was not only a choreographer, she used to design the costumes.
Oh, did she?
Yes, well, I have to be honest that when we were dancing, it was very much chief and the Indians. We were Indians and Flick was the chief. Yeah. You couldn't really have too many chiefs because it would never have worked. So we were incredibly respectful of the fact that Flick, oh, there's my dog.
Yes.
Basil, say hello. Hello, Daddy. We were incredibly respectful of Flick, that she was a choreographer and she knew what she was doing. I mean, there used to be arguments about what foot we stepped on and which arm and this, but basically we listened to Flick, and then the dancing became second nature. She'd do a little step, or she'd do 2 bars and we'd pick it up like that. So, you know, as a team, we were very, 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 very tight, very democratic. And it was in those days, it wasn't really ever heard of that a group of girl dancers got together. And I think our biggest downfall is the fact that we did manage ourselves. We tried with agents and different people, but they never came up to scratch for us. And that's why we never, you know, like the Spice Girls and like Girls Aloud and various groups, we never made any money because A, we weren't singing, and B, we didn't have a real switched on manager who could propel us into stardom.
It was a different time, really, wasn't it? If you think
totally different,
you know, because I think what I was talking to a guitarist called John Etheridge who plays in Soft Machine.
Yeah.
And he was talking about, because he started playing guitar young, and he was doing some gigs in the same venue as Jimi Hendrix.
Oh yeah.
And of course the thing that you sort of forget is that everything was quite small, you know. Yeah. And in the early days, it was just a little club that they'd be playing, with just, you know,
marquee places like that. Yeah.
So,
great club. Yes, I mean, everything was, I mean, even this big studio was very cozy. We used to do our recordings, and I think it was either Studio 8 or Studio 1. Everything was very, very small and cozy and not technical at all. In fact, if we filmed outside, it was all done on film. There was no thing as video. No. And all the technology. Whether we would have survived or been as successful in this day and age, I don't know. I don't think we would, because now, if you compare us to what people do on Strictly, I mean, they literally tie themselves in knots.
Yeah.
And I don't know if we could do that. I don't know if we would have been capable of doing that, because I don't think dance schools in those days made you aware of all the different varieties of sort of almost gymnastics that some of the dancers do.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
But the thing is that, as you said, you were the first group to be doing, you were democratic.
Yeah.
And I think that's an important point, because, as you say before, the dancers would have been like a dance troupe.
Oh, yes. Well, it would be. I mean, Irving Davis, I knew him very well. Irving Davis dancers who were dancing all the time. Dougie Squires was another wonderful chap who I actually worked for later on, back in the 70s. Like Dougie Squires had the Young Generation, which was sort of 20 young things, and they were our competition, but they weren't, because we were so different. They were very much wholesome family show, whereas we were the 6 sexy girls who danced on Top of the Pops.
Yes.
But again, they were just as talented, and probably more, because they did everything. They could sing, they could dance, whatever. And so sorry, I keep losing my
No, this is great.
So we were the only ones of our kind, really. There were other groups, but they didn't have. The one thing I will say is that the BBC gave us the exposure.
Yeah. Because
eventually they realized in 1968, at the end of 1968, they thought, gosh, we're onto a good thing here. Because what happened was the viewing figures at Top of the Pops went shooting up from about 17 to 21 million. And I think they realized that, I'm not saying we had something to do with it. Not totally, because I'm not that vain, but I think we had a lot to do with the fact that the viewing figures went up, because men used to watch us, all the male population. So in 1969, they contracted us every 13 weeks infinitum. So we appeared on Top of the Pops every single week. But we weren't emancipated, because they refused to acknowledge us as Pan's people, as a group of dancers. They would only acknowledge us as single dancers. So we got a single dancer's, a girl dancer's fee, and that was it.
Wow.
Yeah, they wouldn't recognize us, even though we were a group, and everybody knew we were a group, and we were becoming more and more famous as the time went on.
Yeah.
So our fee for the BBC never changed in 10 years. It was always the minimal fee for any dancer.
I mean, seriously, because obviously, you were a key point in Top of the Pops.
You were. People always remember us,
right?
Because we were there so often.
And for that, I think it's actually pretty rotten, actually.
I think, I won't knock the BBC, because they gave us our chance and they gave us the exposure. Yeah. But it was a bit like working for an institution, or like being at school. You had to mind your P's and Q's.
Yes, well, it was. I mean, if you hear the stories about what bands were allowed to record at the BBC and all this sort of thing,
and what they could do and not do. It was very, you really, really had to, almost, when the director came in, not curtsy, but sort of metaphorically curtsy to the BBC. But I will never knock them in that way, because they gave us fame, they gave us exposure. In this day and age, I don't think I would even want to pay my license at the moment, to be honest.
No.
Personally speaking, but that's another thing. But in those days, I give all credit to them, except for our talent, which I felt that we had a certain je ne sais quoi, to the Beeb for giving us the exposure. And of course, we didn't just do Top of the Pops. when we became famous, we did a lot of shows on ITV and BBC, and we carried on doing Belgium and Move Gaga for 3 years after that.
Oh, you did? Oh,
so
right.
we were working basically sort of 364 days a year.
Oh, God. That's
which
amazing.
was fantastic. I mean, can you imagine being a young girl and you're doing exactly what you wanted to do, because that's what I trained to do, in the most incredible environment where you meet people like Jimi Hendrix,
yes.
you know, the Who, Status Quo, the Osmonds when they came over, the Beatles, of course, individually and whatever. I came up out of the bowels of the earth in a yellow submarine with Ringo Starr.
That's marvelous.
Yeah, it was Ruth and I, and all you said was, hello, girls, and that was about it, you know.
Yeah.
But I thought one day I'm going to remember coming up out of the bowels of the earth. This was for a show which was called the George Martin Show.
Oh.
Yeah, back in 1967, which was directed by a very young guy called David Mitchell, is it? No, I can't remember. But anyway, we went all the way up to Yorkshire to do this show for the George Martin Show with also Pete Cook and Dudley Moore and Blue Mink and various people like that.
That's brilliant.
Yeah.
You did actually tell me a story about meeting Jimi Hendrix, which I thought was
Jimi Hendrix. Well, dear Jimmy, yes, we were. It was his very early days, and we were doing all along the Watchtower.
Oh, right.
At not the BBC, but where Riverside Studios is in London, in Hammersmith. For some reason, we were there for a while, and we were rehearsing this number up on the stage, and Flick, you know, being very inventive, she had us groveling all over the floor. And then suddenly, in the middle of rehearsal, the door flings open, and in comes the legend.
Yeah.
Followed by Noel Redding and Mitch Mitchell.
Oh,
now,
wow.
Ruth and I were at school with Mitch Mitchell.
Oh.
We were at school together because after I did my ballet school, we both went to Corona Stage School. And Mitch was there with us. So we knew Mitch. And of course, everything came to a standstill because Jimmy had heard we were there. And Jimmy jumped up on the stage. And for some reason, he made a beeline for me. And because, you know, he's an incredible gentleman, he took my hand and did a big sweep and kissed my hand. Well, I didn't wash it for about a month. But it was so amazing. It was sort of like a historical moment. This man, this incredible man was here with us. We were doing his number. He was chatting to us. And he kissed my hand. Yeah. So it was for me, it was a big moment. It really was to meet such a legend.
Yes, that's lovely. That's a
lovely. Yeah, we were very lucky because we worked with loads of. I mean, come to mind, Moody Blues,
right?
Of course, and people like Nielsen, and of course, when they came over, which wasn't very often, Stevie Wonder, my favorite man of all time.
Oh wow!
Yeah, my favorite man. I remember when Yoko Ono and John Lennon were on Top of the Pops. Doing Give Peace a Chance. I was there. And also when little Michael Jackson was part of the Jackson 5, we were there. I was there watching him dancing up and down and singing his songs.
Oh, wow.
So yeah, we had magical moments.
Yes.
On
that does sound magical because it's like it's sort of
we girls wrote a book a couple of years ago, back in 2013, and although it was quite successful, I've always had this book in me, and a couple of times the girls stopped me writing it because I think they felt that I would reveal certain secrets of them.
Oh, okay.
I would never do. Unfortunately, poor darlings, most of them have passed to that big studio in the sky. Yeah. But I wouldn't do that. But I have got a book in me.
Right.
And I'm sort of, I've done about a couple of 100 pages. So I have started writing it, and I'm going to rewrite it, and I am going to put it out one day, and sort of go into the minutiae of things.
Oh, it would be amazing. It would be fantastic. That would be fantastic. And to be honest, it should be a film, really.
Well, having said that, there's a wonderful guy called Paul Smith, who owned a company called Celador. Does that mean anything to you? Who did Who Wants to Be a Millionaire?
Oh, okay, yeah.
And Paul was our floor manager on Top of the Pops. But being quite a clever man, he went on to become a very, very, very wealthy man through doing other productions and things. And he had his own film company. And he sold Celador, it was called Celador Productions, and he sold Who Wants to Be a Millionaire for quite a few £1 million. And he approached us about doing a film about Pan's people. The problem was, when you get 6 people, 6 girls, all trying to make up their mind, doesn't work. So after about 5 months of negotiating and backwards and forwards and forwards and backwards, and one person wouldn't do this, one person wouldn't do that, one person. And also Paul, as much I admired him, he wasn't a skinflint, but he was out to make money.
Yes.
So he was prepared to give us so much, but to us it wasn't enough.
Yeah.
So unfortunately, the whole project fell through. I still think it's a brilliant idea, and I still think somebody should do it one day. I mean, now there's only Babs left and me of the original group who owned Pan's People, owned the name Pan's People. Cherry lives in America, and sometimes, I think at the moment actually she's over here in the country somewhere. And little Sue, who joined us in 1974, Sue Hendrix, she lives up north. So who knows? The thing is, Dick, I'm not getting any younger, so these things have got to happen soon.
Yeah.
I mean, I might get COVID and pop off or whatever, or fall down a cliff or anything. Squashed by an elephant. No, I don't think that's going to happen. But you know what I mean.
Anything's possible.
Sorry, my chair's totally wobbling. It's going backwards and forwards. So I need to be here.
No,
yes.
It's good.
Yeah, so we did actually attempt to do a record, and Mike Batt was our composer, you know him of the Wombles, and it was called, excuse me, but I'm not very good at saying this, you can really rock and roll me. Now, I can roll my, no, I can't roll my R's, but I can roll my arse. I can't. That's what I tell people, because all my R's come out as W's. So saying you can really rock and roll me doesn't sound quite sexy as if unless you're some sort of female singer. Anyway, this song, we did everything to promote it, and we did the most amazing promotion, and it went straight into the charts. We were so excited. And would you believe it? The BBC refused to acknowledge it and promote it. Absolutely refused. So of course, we were very cross because it bombed out of the charts. Yeah. And then their group, which was the Young Generation, which is owned basically by the BBC, which then became the First Edition, did a song.
Yes.
And they appeared on Top of the Pops.
Yes.
And that's my one bugbear. I thought that was really horrible of the BBC to do that.
There is a little bit of cloak and dagger stuff that goes on.
There is. Very, very, very much so. You can't do this, you can't do that. No. But, we all left on good terms. I mean, I've never had any. In fact, I will say the BBC are the best payers in the world. You can always guarantee that if there's some money to be, had on repeats, the BBC will automatically send it to you. So they've been amazing like that, I will say. Though I do think that their views now in this modern world are just too tight.
Yes.
And they should be more open to everybody. If they're going to carry on being an institute and carry on wanting people to pay licenses and that sort of thing. What about you, Vic? So what's your thing? I mean, are you a musician?
Yes.
Yeah, you are.
Since.
Yeah, yes. And what do you play?
Well, I'm a guitarist primarily.
Oh, right. Brilliant. Yeah. And so what made you do this podcast thing?
Well, because the teaching aspect of it, I've always been fascinated by how people learn. And it sounds sort of pretty obvious, but it's not actually as obvious as you think. You get a group of people and you get somebody comes along and they sort of like slip under the radar. They'll have lessons for a period of time, and then suddenly you think, my goodness, you're good. Like,
Yeah,
and then you get some other people that are really good to start with, and they sort of peter out, and then other, and it's
yeah,
that type of thing.
yeah,
And I started to become very interested in the sort of psychological aspect of what goes on.
yeah,
Particularly people who are, I call them the anomalies, right?
yeah. That's a good
And
word.
the reason, people like Hendrix really
Yeah.
interest me is this, somebody turns up who's completely the opposite of everything else that's going on.
Mm.
He's a great player, but there's a lot of other great players around.
Yeah.
But they literally sort of reinvent what's happening.
Well,
And you see it a lot. It's not just Hendrix. There's a lot, there are a lot of guys
yeah.
in jazz and all the rest of it.
Yeah.
Or it could be in the arts.
Yes,
somebody will appear and effectively reinvent what's going on. Yes. And it's almost like the rules that you think exist have suddenly been turned upside down.
You've got to stand out. You've got to be original. And I think Hendrix was. I mean,
Yes.
the moment he burnt his guitar,
yes,
and everything changed for him, But I mean, he's still one of the greatest guitarists in the world. But then
yes.
there's other great.
Yes, I totally agree. And I think the point, it's those type of people that started to fascinate me about what made somebody successful. I don't mean from a point of view financially. I mean successful in their art form, right?
I always think, sorry to interrupt you, but I think one of the most important thing is, whether you've got talent or you haven't talent, you can still become famous. You've got to have a belief in yourself.
Yes.
You've got to have tenacity. You've got to have to accept failure.
Yes.
The more failure you accept, the stronger you get. And that's how I became a dancer, because when I first went to auditions, it took me 6 months to get a job. Yes. Going to auditions probably once or twice a week and being rejected every single time. And you could be a Hendrix, but not have the chutzpah. That's the only word I can think of, to push yourself all the time. And every time you fall down, you get up again and you try again. And that's what makes you successful.
See, the thing that fascinated me about your story there, because obviously, your training would have been, you said you went to ballet school.
Yeah.
Somewhere in there, you learned contemporary dance in that. Which obviously you didn't mention, but
No, I didn't learn contemporary dance at all. What I learned at Elmhurst was just ballet. Basically, we had something called musical comedy, which was very naff. I didn't learn jazz until I learned with Eva Megiddo, who was a real jazz teacher in the 60s at the Corona Stage School. Right. And when I learned to do jazz dance, that was more the grounding for pans, not contemporary dance. Okay, contemporary dance is very, very different. Contemporary dance is very, very raw. It's also, you have to have a lot of sort of inner strength from here. You have to be very, very nimble because you're always doing different shapes on the floor, and most of it's done in bare feet.
Right.
We weren't like that at all. Everything was more or less, we had big shoes and very glam, and everything we did was based in our very early videos, in our very, very early Top the Popsies, which is sort of around about 68 to 70, which were all black, and most of them were in black and white. The jazz element really came through, and I still have some of those. Right. And it was much more earthy and into the ground, but we still wore shoes, and we had modern costumes rather than the very simple sort of leotardy sort of see the shape of the body movement of contemporary dance. Yeah.
So so really what I was sort of getting at was the sort of difference between ballet and what you were doing for Pan's people. So so the point that I was sort of saying there is that, or trying to get at, is it's those sort of moments where you'll get somebody like yourselves who are different
we were
from what else is going on. And a lot of that is obviously to do with the environment you're in, because what was going on at the time was different to what you appeared on the scene, and maybe you were like I was saying, the anomaly, you know, the things that were suddenly different. And that fascinates me. And the other thing that fascinates me is the fact that you were successful as Pan's People for so long. Because, you know, it wasn't just like for a year. That was quite a considerable period of time for a group of dancers.
Yes, I think. Well, one of the reasons of that is that we were very original at the time. Also, if you think back to the 60s or late 60s and 70s, you know, that incredible time where you know, London was the hub of the world. Everybody wanted to come to London. Everybody wanted to, you know, dress like Mary Quant. There was Biebers. You know, we were top in everything. We were top in music with the Beatles. We were top in clothes and design. We were top in the country was the top. I mean, everybody wanted to come to Chelsea and wander around and see famous people. So we were absolutely in the right place at the right time. Also, you know, the fashion of that time was so conducive to what we were doing. That it really worked. But, you know, again, I have to hark back to the BBC. They kept us there for almost nigh on 10 years.
Yeah.
But of course, it wasn't just the BBC. We were incredibly popular. And I think a lot of that was due to Flick and her incredibly innovative ideas. I mean, she was totally off the wall sometimes with her ideas. And I feel that that's probably what kept us going. Also, you know, you can go along. It's like, do you remember when McDonald's first started? There was just McDonald's. Now you've got all these different outlets. There was nobody. There was just us for about 10 years until eventually Arlene Phillips, who another amazing choreographer who, you know, I know, came along and did Hot Gossip. Yeah. You know, if Hot Gossip and Pan's People had been right at the same time, there would have been an enormous rivalry, and I don't really know who would have won, because having said that, Arlene's choreography again was very inventive, though her group was much more raunchy than we were. And they also I think they could do a lot more gymnastics, and it was much more in your face, whereas ours was a little bit more coquettish, you know.
Yeah.
But we definitely had a je ne sais quoi, and I think that's what kept us going. And the fact that we were very much a democracy, we were very hardworking. We were also incredibly professional most of the time. There were odd moments, but most of the time we were professional.
Yeah, you wouldn't have lasted if you weren't, I'm sure.
No, we wouldn't, no.
Absolutely.
We each bowed out slowly. You know, Babs went on to marry Robert Powell when he was doing Jesus. Louise went off with a lovely other gentleman from the north. And I developed a really bad ankle. So in Christmas 1975, I left, which really only left Ruth and Cherry and Susie. But, you know, going back, I think because Pan's People sustained such an enormously long time, and not only that, every week in the year, that's why we're still remembered. Yes. I mean, Hot Gossip is remembered because they were brilliant, but for different reasons. But, you know, when you sort of, like on quizzes, you know, if they say a group, Pan's People always comes up first.
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
Yes, continuity, I think, and the fact that we were always there. But, you know, I don't knock it. I am still so proud. Nobody ever recognizes me except for taxi drivers. Taxi drivers always remember, oh, are you in Pan's People? Yes. And there's me sitting glowing in the back thinking, somebody remembers me.
A lot of people remember you, I'm sure.
Now, listen, Vic, could I just talk a little bit about what I'm doing now?
Yes, I actually wanted to ask you about what you did, because you did a lot of choreography work.
Yes, I did. Oh, gosh, yes. You know, I fell into choreography.
Because you worked with some...
I will. Choreography I fell into. I am not a natural choreographer. I've never really set out to be a choreographer. But I befriended Benny Hill through one of my dancers. I filmed another dance group, and she knew him through her mother. And I don't know, he took an instant liking to me and asked me if I wanted to be his choreographer.
Oh, wow.
I didn't actually, because I was terrified. But sometimes, you know, it says, you know, feel the fear and do it anyway. And I did. And it was a great experience working with Benny. It was Benny Hill. It was nerve-wracking with him, but wonderful at the same time. And again, you'd met a lot of wonderful people. Yeah. And of course, he was the most iconic and the most up-to-date star of that time, besides Morecambe and Wise.
Yeah.
So I spent 2 years with him, doing various his shows. But the problem was that after 2 years, Benny was one of these people that as long as you were loyal to him, everything was okay.
Right.
But it came Christmas 1980. No, sorry, Christmas 1979 going into 80. And I was due to do a show with him in the March. I had a baby in Christmas 1979. My mother died on New Year's Eve. And my father-in-law was dying of cancer, and I had pneumonia or bronchitis. Right. And I wrote to Benny and I said, Benny, I cannot see me doing this job in March because there's too much going on in my life at the moment. Could I postpone it and maybe do your next one or next year? Never talked to me again.
Oh my God.
Yeah, except for once, probably a year before he died, he came when I started Dance Attic, which is my big dance studio in London, in Fulham, which is now run by my children. He wanted to rehearse on Boxing Day, and we opened a studio for him, and I went in and said hello to him, but he never talked to me again because I'd broken that loyalty. Even though he knew what was going on, he knew what a state I was in. But Benny was a very not singular man in the fact that, there was just Benny. He didn't have a wife or anything. So his show and all us girls were all his family. So for me to say, Benny, I can't do it. I just, I'm just not in the frame of mind with all that's going on.
That's interesting, isn't it? Because there are a couple of comedians who come across like that.
I think comedians basically are very insecure.
Yes.
Very insecure people. And that's why a lot of them are totally on their own.
Yeah.
They don't have, how many do you know that they've actually got families and wives and children and everying else, look at people like, Frankie Howard as well.
Frankie Howard, yeah.
Dick Emery, and I could think of loads of them, who were all brilliant at their time. And Benny was a genius. And there's nothing he didn't know. He was one of these encyclopedias. And he used to go off to France when the holiday times came. He used to go off to France to get more material for his shows. Though some of his sketches were quite smutty. And I don't know in this day and age with woke and God knows what else, whether they would actually survive. But nobody could take away the genius of his mind and his inventiveness. Yeah, so that's great. So I did that. I didn't really do any other shows because I wasn't actually interested in choreography. Though now, I must admit, since I've been in the West Country and I started doing all my dance classes around the West Country, and then I started getting a team together and we'd go and do festivals and things, which was Dee Dee and Pan's Fans. That was quite fun. I quite enjoyed doing that. And of course, all that choreography is mine. All the numbers we do now are all mine. And last year we did The Greatest Dancer, which was the greatest mistake of my life. But there you go. That awful show.
I don't know about this. So
it's a show called The Greatest Dancer, and it's about people auditioning to become the greatest dancer.
Right.
And they approached me and said, could I get a team together? And I said, yes, but I don't have to audition. I used to be in Pan's People. But my girls would love to do it because my ladies are all my age but younger. Some of them are married, some of them divorced, some of them lost their husbands. So we're like a little one dance family, and they wanted to do it. And Greatest Dancer said, if you don't dance with them, we don't want them.
Oh.
So I was put into the most awful position. So of course I capitulated and did it. And it was the most awful, humiliating moment of my life, I think. It was dreadful auditioning for that. I didn't enjoy it at all. And I vowed I'd never do anything with the girls again unless they did it on their own. I wouldn't be involved as a dancer. Because I remember this young girl coming up to me who was a researcher, and she said, it'll be so exciting. You get to be on the telly. she said to me.
All right.
And I thought, what am I doing here?
Well, obviously not a very good researcher then. If she
I know that sounds very arrogant, and it probably is, and I don't care if people think that. But I did it for my ladies. I didn't do it for myself. I did it for them. And the experience they had there, they still love, even though we didn't get through, they loved it. They loved it. So I learned a lot by that. I did it for them, but I know I'll never do it again with me actually appearing. I feel I've done too much to sort of not demean myself. That's the wrong word. I mean, why should I audition? You know, people know who I am. So that's what's been happening in the last few years. I've been dancing in the West Country, keeping my body going, encouraging people to dance, because basically dance is so therapeutic. You know, besides the actual physical side of learning to dance and bending and stretching and everything else, and we put routines together, which are great fun, it's the mental situation. So what I do is I do a routine and they have to copy it and remember it. So you're using your mind, you're using your body, you're getting healthy. You're also creating this hub of girls together, and we are a dance family, and they've all become great friends. You know, we're very, very, very close. We look after each other. You know, we keep an eye on each other. You know, if somebody's ill or sick or unhappy, we go and visit them. So we are very much a family, and that's one part of the creation that I really feel terribly proud of. That I created something for all these women, not so much the ones like me who are married and got partners, but those who are on their own. They've made friends. They now spend time together. They bubble together. So that's been good for me. And then that's my dancing, which of course I can't do at the moment, but I'm learning soon, Vic. I'm learning soon. So maybe, I know, I'm so excited. So maybe in a week or two, I'm going to be a techno granny. Yes, because my son's having a baby in April. Techno granny will be able to do Zoom. So I'll be able to do my classes online. But it's not all I do. If you know, I'm a real Mrs. Malaprop. If you know who Mrs. Malaprop, and I will explain to people. Mrs. Malaprop was a lady from a book called School from Scandal many centuries ago. And basically, she used to mispresent words. So she used to say things in a strange way. And in fact, basically, all the things she said were sort of verbal cock-ups and sort of word accidents. So I realized that this was something that happened to me a lot. And so it came into my mind. Henry and I got married. I married Henry Marsh, who is the keyboard player of Sailor, or was. He's now a very, very successful composer, done a lot of work in America. And we got married in 2011. And I thought, I'm going to put this book together, and everybody at the wedding will get a book of my malapropisms. And then I thought, well, I've never drawn before. I'm going to draw them. So I did. Now, 7 years later in lockdown, I decided that I would add to this book. And I went out to get a publisher, and I got a publisher called Austin Macaulay. And they put out my book before Christmas. And it is basically, here it is.
Right.
It's called You May Now Kiss the Dog. And it's basically, all different pictures of illustrated of my malapropisms.
Okay, so you've illustrated it.
What?
You've illustrated it.
Yeah, I do. This is one of my favorite. It's called Killing Two Stones with One Bird.
Yes, brilliant.
Can you see?
Yes.
Mick Jagger and what's his name? And then there's loads. I got they all died of bluebonnet plague, and this one says my compliments to the shelf instead of the chef. Yes. So my whole book, so it came out at Christmas. It's definitely one of those books you put in a stocking and then it goes by the lavatory.
Yes, but it's a great idea, because that used to be something that was really important in British humour.
Yeah.
Really important.
It's pretty clean. There's only one at the end which is a bit dodgy, but it's quite funny. The thing is, it's basically it's through Austin Macaulay or on Amazon.
Right.
It's £9.99, and I donate because, you know, at the end of the day, as an author, you don't get £9.99.
No.
By the time it comes to you, it's probably £2.50. I've donated 50p to help the aged. So everybody who buys a book, a donation of that will go to help the aged.
Right.
So that's what I've been doing.
I'll stick that in the show notes. I'll get the information and put it in the show notes. Right?
I can always, if you want, I can send you the promotion on this in an email. Yeah. I'll send that to you. But it's a great little book, and I'm actually very proud of it because I never knew I could draw. And
that's impressive.
A lot of people have said to me. A lot of people have said to me, Dee Dee, we love the drawings. They're very simple. I'm never going to be an artist, but you know, best I could do. And of course, now I'm so inspired because, you know, in lockdown, people always say to me, I'm so bored. I don't understand how they can be bored, because what I'm doing, I'm actually animating my children's stories. Well, not myself, my husband, Henry, who's just come in the room. He animates, he's going to animate my children's stories. I've been drawing them, and he's going to put simple animations, and then we're going to put them out. And that's basically my story.
That's fantastic. Because I know how difficult it is creating a book in any shape or form. I've done a couple, and they I always find myself going round and round in circles. You know, you get an idea, and I have a real problem focusing enough.
Oh, well, then that's the problem. You've got to be tenacious. You've got to sit. Like at the moment, I'm sitting every single day and I'm drawing. Yeah. In fact, Henry's come back. So I've got to go in a minute, but he sits here, and all my pictures go up and there, and he cleans them up for me, and then he colors them, or I say, no, I want this color, I don't want that color. I mean, he's a genius, actually, my husband. He can do all. He's laughing, but he is. I mean, I couldn't do all this without him. No, I think, you know, it's all bollocks. He says I'm talking bollocks. It's true. It's one of those things I have really learned in my life, that if you want to do something, you've got to persevere.
Yes.
But I do it in my own time. I have been known to think, right, shall I sit down and watch a bit of telly or read a book or do that? And I have actually sat down and done nothing. But you have to keep going if you want to achieve. And this is what I achieved in lockdown. So I feel good about doing that. Now I'm going to go on and do more. That's
great. It's brilliant. Well, I think that's a good place to stop.
You never mentioned my darling brother who you used to know.
Well, I was going to talk to you about Stuart.
Yeah.
There is something else. There's something else, but what I'll do is I'll talk to you after the recording, because there's something else brewing in my
head. Because eventually what will happen is that I'll be able to do Zoom on my own computer, so I'm not using up Henry's time when he's sitting in the studio. So then we can chat about Stuart.
Yes,
he's still very much in my mind, even though
I'm sure he is, because he is in a lot of people's minds.
Yeah.
And that's why I was going to talk to you about
Nick,
that.
very nice to talk to you.
It was wonderful.
And I will stay here so that you switch off or you do whatever you do.
Yeah. So that's wonderful, and thanks ever so much for your time. And it was brilliant.
It's a pleasure. It's a pleasure. Thank you.
All right. So see you then. Bye. Well, that was great fun. Thanks to Dee Dee for her time, all of her stories. That was amazing. And also, you might have picked up on at the very end, she mentioned her brother Stuart. I'm hoping that we'll be able to do a show about Stuart Wilde at some point, which would be very exciting. So all the details are in the show notes, and I'll see you next time. See you then.